All right. Good evening, Merriam. We are at the community center. It is 6:53 p.m. Central Time on this beautiful Monday, June 8th, 2026. And we are going to attend a city council meeting at the community center. Every time they were always this door is locked. You excited for the meeting?
Yeah. I'm interested to hear good information or debatable information.
Yeah? We'll hear what they want us to hear, right?
Yeah.
That's Merriam. The government, anyways. Howdy, Andy.
Hey, sign-in sheets over there if you want to sign in.
Okay. Howdy. Interesting location for a council meeting, right?
I'm only here to hear what I think I won't hear.
Yeah.
I just feel like I have to make so many of them.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for
The better half?
the situation with the creek, I probably wouldn't have come.
It's interesting they want everyone to sign in.
Uh-huh.
It's interesting they want people to sign in. They never push this at the regular city council meetings.
Yeah, but I knew you like you were trying to get
For this meeting, I have an audio device, recording device. Are they going to be speaking from that podium? No?
From that microphone.
Okay, so there's no table or anything over there to put one on.
Sorry.
Who's using this?
Nobody is. It's just sitting there.
Okay. That's nice.
Oh, like the same Okay. So okay. Stupid things.
Let's hear it with the better angle is back here.
You'll find out the Corps of Engineers is about as crazy as every other film we can see.
About as loony as they get?
About as good as they get, yeah.
Oh, good as they get.
No.
No? Huh. Well, I tried a couple years ago to be able to sit in and listen to the meetings that they have, because they've been having meetings with the city staff for a while, and they never let me in.
I didn't know.
Yeah, I don't think she likes me. I guess that's her prerogative.
Even we don't agree on a lot. We share everything,
Yeah,
and everyone has a right to do whatever they want.
yeah. Well, I appreciate that. You're good.
We'll go ahead and call tonight's meeting to order. Craig, will you please stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Hay,
Here.
Councilmember Shredder. Here. Councilmember Dozemeyer.
Here.
Councilmember Hammond. Here. Councilmember Hall.
Here.
Councilmember Leahy.
Here.
Councilmember Ryder. Here. Councilmember Silvers.
Here.
Councilmember Yelridge. Here.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. It's good to see everyone. I see planning commissioners and residents and business owners. And just for the record, we meet the second and the fourth Monday. You're always welcome to come to any of our meetings. It's good seeing you. First item up, the next item up, I guess I should say, is public items. Members of the public are encouraged to use this time to make comments about matters directly related to the city's programs and services. Comments related to a matter or topic on the city council agenda that is the subject of a public hearing should be provided during the scheduled public hearing and not during the public comment period. Please note, individuals making public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. The city reserves the right to refuse public comments which are inconsistent with parameters established within the governing bodies of the rules of procedure. We do have an open forum or an open house that's going to be shortly afterwards. Anybody's welcome to come forward and make any comments that you want to this evening. I do think it's important to note that whether you have questions or comments, we will listen to those, but we will not be responding back at this time. At the open house, some of the questions that might be directed toward our Corps of Engineers will be done at the open house. So you'll be able to personally have those questions answered then. Any other questions not concerning the Corps will be answered by staff or by council at a later date. Okay, so we did have a list that was for sign-up sheet that does not preclude anybody that has not signed the list from coming forward at this time. Is there anybody in the public that would like to speak to the council about any? Now, I would say that you come forward, sir, the name and address for the podium for the record.
Billy Cronin, is this on? Test 1, 2? Okay, we're different than council chambers.
Billy Cron, 6633 White Street. So, I think it's important that we protect our downtown. In the past century, there were definitely floods that caused damage. It's no coincidence that the city constructed drainage tunnels that bring water westward into the creek, and then it exacerbates the flooding problem down there, as all that water needs to go under the railroad bridge. That's where we saw flooding in 2025. I would like for you to focus on the actual choke point that we know is causing the flooding, that's the railroad bridge, and perhaps on the excess water that's getting dumped westward into historic downtown Merriam, rather than tearing down historic downtown Merriam. I'd like to keep the authentic downtown that we have, rather than bulldozing it and creating a Disneyland downtown. That's all I have to say. Hopefully some other neighbors here would like to talk. I promise, it's not scary.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to come forward and speak at this time? Come forward, sir, name and address for the record.
My name is Rick Williams. I've got a business in downtown Merriam. Had moved that business here in 1986 and have been trying to struggle through for a while to go, but the general attitude currently seems to be to try and move all the local businesses that were down there out of the way so you can put up what you got on the hill over here. And I think that one thing that should be important to try to remember is that the foundation of many small places is the small business. And if you make it so there's no place for small business to begin, you make it for no roots for bigger businesses to grow on. Please keep that in mind. Thank you.
Sure. Would anyone else like to come forward at this time? Ms. Name and address for the record.
Yeah, I think you need to also keep in mind that aesthetic besides the drainage, which I know is a big deal, but, driving into Merriam from the east, like coming off of I-35 and stuff, to be able to not see the downtown and to just see flood walls is just gonna be an eyesore. And I think it's gonna be a problem with, graffiti, and it's gonna be a nightmare. And I got a lot of concerns. And that's it.
Yeah, before you leave, could you give us your name and address for the record?
Yeah, Tracy O'Connell, 9901 John.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Would anyone else like to come forward at this time? See no one rushing to the podium or to the microphone. All right, well, we will close out the public portion of this meeting this evening. Next item of this evening is consent agenda. All items listed in this heading are considered routine by the city council and may be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless the council member so requests, in which case that item will be removed and considered agenda and considered separately. We have two items, we can have either of those removed. For that, I would entertain the motion then to approve.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the council approve consent agenda items 1 and 2.
Thank you. Mr. Silvers.
I second that.
Okay, Madam Clerk, we have a motion second.
Councilmember Shetta.
Aye.
Councilmember Cosmeyer.
Aye.
Councilmember Hans.
Aye.
Councilmember Colville.
Aye.
Councilmember Lahey.
Aye.
Councilmember Ryder.
Aye.
Councilmember Silvers.
Aye.
Councilmember Yavich. Aye. Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next item up this evening is the mayor's report. Some of you may know I usually give a lengthy report, but in light of the importance of having our city carnival here this evening and his staff, I'm going to forego most of my report, but I would just like to briefly mention the fact that our Turkey Creek Craft Festival was excellent again this year. I think about 7,500 people were estimated to come to that meeting, or come to that event. And all of our staff did a great job. Police, fire, obviously our community center staff was the most important part of that event. But I heard good things about it, and I was, a lot of us were there. And, I just wanted to mention that. But I'm not going to talk about all the other great things, and I know council said a lot of stuff. I wish you out by not telling all the stuff you've done, but I'm going to forego my stuff and your stuff. But, to get right on to some of the more important stuff, we have with us this evening, Colonel Niewarner and his staff is sitting here in the front. And they've been working for a number of years to try to come up with a plan. And we're about the 65% plan for how to get Merriam, downtown Merriam out of the floodplain. And we're really looking forward to hearing, we as the council have not really heard that plan. So we're gonna learn as you out there in the audience this evening, about as much about this as what you currently know. We're gonna learn a lot more this evening as well as you. I'm gonna turn this over to Mr. Engel, and we're gonna switch in just a moment here. We're gonna go out there and have his staff come forward.
We'll go ahead and switch now. While the council and the Corps are switching so that they can face the audience, I'll just do a quick brief intro to the item. As the mayor said, we have been working on this project. This is really a generational project with the Corps. It started in the late 90s with the flooding that was occurring. So the Corps has been working diligently since 2002 through 2015 on a feasibility study, and they've been working full focus for the last 3 years on the engineering of this study. So we're really excited to have Colonel Niewarner and his staff with us this evening. We don't have all of the answers. That's going to be important. This is not 100% fully designed. However, we have lots of answers. We have most of the answers. So we are excited to be able to get the opportunity for you to ask those questions during the open house portion of this afterwards. This is just a point to share where we're at. The council hasn't seen this, so this will be the first time that they digest it as well as you. And I think it's important to point out that this has not been voted on to move forward by any of the organizations. We've got our core partners. We also have partners with Johnson County Stormwater, which we would not be able to do this without either of those partners, which is fantastic for a town our size to have those type of partners. But all of those individual entities are going to have to decide on their own the merits of this project and if they move forward with it. So again, just to point out, the decision has not been made. This is just a point. This is a touch point to share with the council and share with the public that we can answer a lot of questions at this point. So that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Colonel Niewarner.
Oh, do you want me to grab that one,
I was gonna use that one, but.
Okay, we use that one. You're the,
Or your mess.
you're the mayor. This is your city. I'm just a guest. Mr. Mayor, council members, appreciate the opportunity to come speak with you today. My name's Andy Niewarner, so I'm the commander of the Kansas City District, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And so we, first of all, just show of hands, who's familiar with the Army Corps of Engineers? Okay, so maybe about a third, but those who haven't worked with the Corps of Engineers before. So we fall under the United States Army. Corps of Engineers was founded back in 1776, primarily to provide engineering solutions for the nation. Our core mission is civil works. Since the days of Lewis and Clark, the Corps of Engineers has been focused on providing civil works, technical solutions to foster economics within the country. We picked up other missions over the years. We do military construction, that started in World War II, and then we also do some environmental work, cleaning up toxic waste and stuff like that for the nation since the 70s. But really kind of our bread and butter and what we take the most pride in doing is civil works. And a big part of that is flood risk management. And that's really what we're here today, is to talk about a possible solution to some of the challenges you see on Turkey Creek. First off, I just want to thank Mr. Engel. I appreciate your update to the City Council last month. I think that was a very well laid out kind of snapshot of how we've gotten to this point. So as the Corps of Engineers, we're a federal agency. We don't come out and say, hey, we're going to do a project here. That project is requested through the community, through your representatives. And so when we did a study back in the 2000s and then finalized it in 2016, that was directed by Congress, that we come down and figure out a possible technical solution to flooding on Upper Turkey Creek in Merriam, Kansas. And so they went through that process, they come up with ideas, they do the economics, they figure out the safety, the life safety portion of it, and then they come up with a very broad solution. We call it a 35% design. So think about that if you're building a house. I want a 3-bedroom house with a 2-car garage, 3 bathrooms, and a walkout basement.
That's basically what 35% design is. When you get to a 65% design, okay, that master bedroom has 250 square feet. It's got a window facing east. The door's going here. There's going to be outlets here, here, and here. The exterior of the house is going to be stucco. It's going to be a specific color. The gutters are going to look like this. The roof is going to look like this. It's almost a completed house. So that's really kind of where we're at. So where we were 10 years ago when the study was originally done, we just kind of knew we needed a house with 3 bedrooms and a 2-car garage. Now we know exactly what that house is going to look like. And so we're going to share that with you here later today. And we definitely appreciate and welcome your feedback, both from the council and the community. As mentioned, we've got our team of experts here. They'll be standing by after this to answer individual questions. Whether it's tied to real estate, we've got Seth Thomas, who's our acting chief of real estate, so talks about properties and where this would fall. We've got our project manager, Kaylee, Melissa Corkle, our senior project manager. We've got Connor, who's I think we had a couple comments early on about the hydrology, about how the water moves through the drainage. He does all the modeling for that. We have Reed Brown, who's our chief of geotechnical, so a lot of our civil design, how we design these types of things. And then we also have Courtney here on the end, so she's actually the technical lead for the engineering team that has designed this project for you. So she's pulling all those pieces together, the hydrology, to make sure the design fits within the footprint and how that functions. So we'll have them here afterwards to talk through that a little bit. As many of you know, and from some of the opening comments, this is a really complex drainage. We're in a really congested area. Urban environments are some of the most challenging environments to operate in, particularly when you're talking about water. The water has to go someplace. It either has to sit someplace or you have to move it on quickly to another place. And so the team's worked really hard over the last couple of years to come up with a good solution to this. I won't go to the flood history too much because you've all lived it. Your families, generations have lived it here in Merriam. Just this past summer, we had the 2025 event, pretty significant event. Just reminds us how important this drainage is and some of the challenges you face here in the area. So you might ask, so why is the Corps of Engineers doing this? Why isn't this, the state or the city? The Corps of Engineers really focuses on big projects. We have the expertise. We've got about 850 people in the district that do everything from managing hydropower on Truman and Stockton Lake to managing 18 separate reservoirs to doing military construction across the nation. But we really have those civil experts, and that's who we're focused on today. And they do everything from the design work, the modeling. We have economists, so we had some small business owners up here talking. They go through the economics of this. Does this make sense? Is there a positive net benefit to the community? Is there a federal interest here to do a project? And then if it does come to construction, we do the contracts, and then we manage that construction through contractors who will execute the actual work. At the end of the day, as the Corps of Engineers, we like to say we find solutions to the nation's toughest engineering challenges. We have, across the Corps of Engineers, about 35,000 members with various centers of expertise, many of them focused on flood risk management and economics of life safety. So we bring that expertise with us. It's not just the expertise that resides here in Kansas City, it's expertise across the nation to come up with these solutions. So just to get back why we're here, this is your project, this is your community. We're here because we were asked to find a solution to the problem. Congress tasked us with that, and then I think it was 2022 when Congress authorized us to move forward with actually designing the project. So that's your representatives at work brought us here today. So we're going to present some things to you, and then it's going to be up to the community to figure out which direction they want to go ultimately in the future. I would say again, just thank you. We're here to support you. This is your project. Some of the common questions that come up is what it's going to look like, and we'll show you some pictures of that. Some of the questions are, well, where's it going to go? At the end, we'll be able to kind of lay out where levees and flood walls would go. And then the question that often comes up is, we do a lot of these in other parts of Missouri and Kansas, and You know, we're talking levees that'll stretch for miles upon miles upon miles, and people are like, well, that's gonna be on my land. Are you gonna come and take my land? That's not for us to decide. This is the community's project. We don't require that. That's up to the community to require that property that's required for the project. And then we support them as part of that. And then we do a federal cost share to help offset the cost of building the actual project. So again, we welcome your feedback and questions. You know, these are generational projects. Most communities, you know, will never see the Corps of Engineers. And if you see us once, that's probably more than most other communities. So this is again about education. We do a lot of this. We have a major project down in the Tri-County area, Kansas City Levees, which is a massive $500 million project. Looks very different than what Merriam will look like, but no less important. We have many small communities that are part of that, that we've worked with to make sure that we're meeting their needs, taking their considerations, and ultimately providing them with a project that will increase life safety and property protection in the future for generations to come. So with that being said, next slide. Okay, I already kind of ran through this real quick, but I'll do it again. So if you just raise your hand real quick. Melissa Corkle, she's our Civil Works Program Branch Chief. So she oversees all of our Civil Works projects in the district. Jeff Hengler, he's our Civil Works Section Chief. He's also transitioning to a new role. We also have opportunities to provide oversight on a project like this. Kaylee Jones, the project manager, so she's the kind of like our lead cat herder. So she pulls the engineers together. If it goes to construction, contracting, legal, real estate, she's kind of the one that pulls all the pieces together. Again, Reed Brown is our Chief Geotechnical Branch, oversees all the design work. We have Courtney Forsyth, who's our technical lead for the project. Connor, our hydraulic engineer. And then Seth, our real estate branch chief. And then we also have our public affairs here as well. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and turn this over to Courtney, and she's going to kind of talk through things. And then I think we'll take some questions and answers at that point from the city council. And then after the meeting, we'll have staff standing by to answer individual questions that you might have.
So first, I want to touch a little bit on the flood history. We know there's been flooding on Turkey Creek for decades. This is not a new problem. There's some that happened after the organization of the channel in 1977, 1993, 1998. There's two floods that I want to mention. The 1998 flood. So that's the one that most people remember. It caused $12 million of damages. That's $1998, so we know it's more than that today. So that's for 1998, but there was the recent one last year, July 2025. You can see the high water mark in the bottom right at Waterfall Park, so that's just downstream of where we're having this project. So the water didn't come out of its banks. It wasn't an intense flood. So it is still happening. I can do that. Thank you. Sorry. I can speak up. I'm used to no mic, so I won't yell. I think a common problem is Turkey Creek is flashy. So there's minimal warning time. The creek is up and down very quickly. It's very intense. So the team has had to find ways to mitigate that with passive construction. And so that's what I'll touch on later. It's just because it's so flashy, there's not a lot of ways for us to mitigate it otherwise. So I first want to touch on key definitions. The Corps is familiar with levees and flood walls and all of those definitions, but we might not all be. And so whenever we talk about levees, that's in that bottom left corner. And so it's an earthen embankment. It's usually, you'll see it covered in grass. It looks like a berm. It looks like a hill. It's not super imposing, but it does protect from the creek side and the protected side on the right. And then when we talk about flood walls, that's in that bottom right. It is a concrete structure. What you see sticking up is a straight concrete flood wall. So when you say flood walls, that's what that would look like conceptually. We do have a couple bridge replacements. There's one at Johnson Drive and Merriam Drive. And so I feel like that's a little bit more familiar, right? We've seen those before, but there are 2 of those that will be complete demolition, so remove and replace with new bridges. The next one is a detention basin. In downtown Merriam, there is a detention basin just north of Merriam Marketplace. And what that really does is help whenever there's interior drainage. It helps detain it so that it can be released slowly back into the creek after the creek has gone by. So it's a good place for the water to sit during the storm, so that's in that detention basin, not sitting in downtown Merriam. The next thing I wanted to touch on was our H&H design effort. So this is really where the project starts first. This is really our first step whenever we start our design phase. And so we have hydraulic model. So we did use, I think some people might be familiar, Johnson County is updating the FEMA model. So we did use their data, we've used their model, and then we've adapted it for our use. So they're focused on 2 different things slightly. So we have used as much of it as we can so that they are well aligned. And then we have updated the hydrologic data, so the rainfall data. It is NOAA Atlas 14 with our rainfall frequencies, so it is up-to-date hydrologic data as well. And then when we talk about the design level of protection, we are talking about a 1% annual exceedance probability, AEP, with an 85% assurance. And that feels like a lot of math. But it's when what would commonly be known as our 100-year event. We call it a 1% because it's our probability, right? So it doesn't mean it happens every 100 years. It means there's a 1% chance of happening every year. And this level of protection is sufficient for USACE to recommend accreditation to FEMA. We cannot mandate that they accredit, we cannot do that, but we can recommend that they accredit, and then FEMA has to take it from there. So we are doing everything, we have met with FEMA, we are doing everything that we can to recommend accreditation. And then the last thing to note, just for comparison, the top of the levee for this design is 2.7 feet above that 1998 record high water. So it is a little bit, more protection than the 1998 flood. And then on the right, this is our inundation map. This is overlaying existing inundation, which is in red, and then with project inundation, which is blue. So you can see that it changes because the light blue, see if I can, yeah, see this light blue, that's the project features that I'll show, and on a better map in the next one. But the main key is you can see the differences in the inundation, again, between the red, which is existing, so current right now, and the proposed is the blue. So it's more in the channel than it is now. Okay, and this is our project overview. North is kind of up and to the right, but along the left side we have Shawnee Mission Parkway, and then this is Merriam Drive, Johnson Drive. This is the downtown Merriam stretch. And so I'm going to touch on some of these items so we can kind of call and see them out. The green is the levees, the orange is the flood walls, the orange is, and obviously, the orange is harder to see, right, because the footprint is a lot smaller. So you might think, why are there levees places, why are there flood walls in other places? So the team has taken a lot of effort to try and minimize real estate impact as much as possible, while also keeping the cost down. And so we've put levees where it makes sense, where we have the room, because they are cheaper to construct, they're cheaper to maintain. And then we've put flood walls in where there's more constraints and it's tighter. Because we all know that this is really urbanized, right? The community is really tight. And so the team has taken a lot of effort to try and minimize impacts. That's why you see some levees and some flood walls throughout this project. The next is just the 2 bridge replacements. So this is the first one, this is the second one. They will be raised just due to the height of the water surface profile that we need for protection. And then another important part was the existing trails through here. Along this west side is a very well-established trail system. And so we've worked with the city, and the Parks Department to make sure that we can maintain that connectivity so that we can have, after the project, we can still have the trail system. We've actually added some potentials for trails along this east side along this is Merriam Marketplace. So we are maintaining the existing trail system, the existing pedestrian bridges across the creek, the existing access, and we're adding some additional access where it makes sense, where we're already putting a levee and it makes sense to put a trail on top. And then you see, it's kind of hard to see on this picture. It's easier, I think, afterwards on the poster board. But this light pink shaped, it's kind of our construction limit, so like what we need to construct this project. It is hard. I'm trying to outline it, but it's hard to see on this PowerPoint slide. And then the next thing I wanted to do was kind of zoom into downtown Merriam. And kind of highlight what that could look like with the project. And so again, same colors. So we've tried to put levee as much as possible, again, while also keeping in mind the potential impacts to the local businesses. And so that's why there are flood walls on the ends to tie into these bridge replacements. But again, we've tried to put the levee as much as we can. This is that detention basin I was talking about to help with the interior drainage. And again, those new pink is like potentials for new trails and new access. And then that's the pedestrian bridge that's across from Merriam Marketplace, and all these existing trails are gonna stay as is. And the heights of the levee are roughly 10 feet in this section right in the middle, and then the flood walls are roughly 12 feet. And I have a picture on the next slides to kind of give a feel for what that means. So on the left, this is a levee at Turkey Creek, just downstream of this project. So this is what a levee could look like. So if we were, on top of this levee, you can see there's some nice slopes, it's grassed, the creek's down here, but from the top of the levee you can see the creek. And then this would be the protected side, the businesses are on the protected side. And then on the right is a flood wall. And so again, the flood walls, they vary in height, but they could be a little bit taller. So I showed a little bit of a taller one. They're not all this tall. Some of them are only a couple feet tall, but some of them are this tall. And so again, this is what it could look like, is the flood wall, and then this is the trail on the backside. This is a levee concept on this project. So this is the pedestrian bridge just across from Merriam Marketplace. This is Merriam Marketplace. This is existing what it looks like today if you stood out there. And then this is if we put a levee. So you might not have noticed that until I pointed it out. It is, again, not meant to be opposing, right? It is grass. It might block a little bit of the view. And then this is a flood wall. This is just south of Johnson Drive facing east. So this is what it looks like today. And this is what it looks like with a conceptualized flood wall. And then with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff Hanger.
Thanks, Courtney, and thanks, Council, for allowing us this opportunity to be here today. So Courtney did a good job talking through technical details and the features of the project and what it might look like. We believe that's what a lot of people are interested in, so that we wanted to put that first. So they'll bring me up as a project manager, and I'll talk schedules and money and approvals and things like that. One thing I wanted to do first is to point out that we have a couple, and it looks like there's still some in the back, and they're online on the city's website, but there's some products. One of them is a frequently asked questions. It's got 4 pages of a lot of questions we got from the city, from other folks that we've worked with. And then the other is, we call it a placemat. It's kind of a fact sheet, front and back. Shows us a version of what Courtney showed in the presentation, and then on the other side has just some basic information about the project. So if nothing else, you may get some questions that you have answered out of these. I've got a schedule here to show, and I'll echo one of the things that Colonel Englander mentioned at the beginning, that this project is something that's gone on for quite some time. We know that for a lot of you, the Corps of Engineers process goes slower than you would like. We feel the same way, but one of the things is, as he also mentioned, these are generational projects. They're projects that you want to do one time and you want to do it deliberately and get it right. So they take a little bit longer to get implemented, but that's where we are. The other thing is that they're a partnership. And so we've got a lot of really good engineers that work with Corps of Engineers and other experts in different disciplines, but we worked with a lot of really good staff from the city of Merriam, from Johnson County, that have provided good input. And so I think we really do have, for the project that was recommended and approved by Congress, this is the ideal implementation of within the parameters of that project. So where are we today? We're at 65%. There was a good analogy of that, initial floor plan concept, and now you know a little bit more about the bedroom and the master bath and things like that. So we have those parameters, I think, figured out. And if you didn't, if you have more detailed questions afterwards, we'll be around and we'll be able to answer as many of them as we can. We've got the experts here that know how to answer those. But we're really at a juncture point where at this 65% design, it's really where we know what's going to be, what the project is going to look like. And it's a decision time. It's an opportunity for Corps of Engineers working with the city of Merriam to decide, is this a project that we want to move forward on together? So that's something that I know you guys will be evaluating in the near future. So one of the things that you haven't heard anybody talk about yet is budget versus cost. So we have a cost estimate that's under development right now. We're not ready to release it yet. We want to make sure that we get the numbers right, because once a number gets floated, it's hard to adjust it from there. So in the next month or two, we anticipate being able to deliver that to the city. That'll include a cost not just of the construction and all the design, but all the utilities, all the real estate that's needed. So it's a full package deal. Currently, the owner briefly mentioned Congress approving this project. So the way the Corps of Engineers projects are implemented is Congress, in what's called the Water Resources Development Act, or WRDA. They approve projects for the Corps of Engineers and other water resources agencies to implement. Those projects will say, I think if you can look it up on congress.gov probably, and you see like 2 or 3 lines, Upper Turkey Creek Project, City of Merriam, Kansas. And then in 2016, which is when the project was authorized, a price limit of $39 million, or a price target of $39 million. We know that 2016, that was a long time ago, and certainly prices have gone up considerably since then. They do write into those laws escalation to account for inflation. And in today's dollars, the cost limit, the ceiling that Congress has set is $73 million. While we don't have a cost estimate yet, we do know that this project will cost more than likely more than $73 million. And so if there's a joint decision to move forward, the very first step, and what you see there, post-authorization change request, is the administrative process of going back to Congress and saying, we're going to need a cost increase on this project. Congress passes those WRDAs in, that it sounds like that might not be a great opportunity to go to Congress and get something done, but that's actually one thing that they have done very well over decades, is pass Water Resources Development Act. So they typically do those every 2 years on even years. So we expect a WRDA in 2026. Now we're not going to make that window, but they should in 2028 have another WRDA passed. And so the first step would be to get this project approved for an increased cost authorization. So that's that star you see that aligns with late 2028. Once a WRDA is passed, typically there's a lag of at least a couple of years. In the case of this project, when it was first authorized, it was like 6 years before funding starts flowing. So that's the gap that you see between the red star and then final design starting in 2030 timeframe. we may have projects that are in construction, which is what this project is considered, move to the top of the list for funding, so we may actually be able to start design sooner than that, as soon as the word is authorized, but, you know, we're assuming that it could take a little bit of time for that money and funding to flow. So there's another year or so worth of effort to take this project from 65% design to 95% design, and in that time frame, that's one of the things, or that's an opportunity for us to then provide what we call notice to proceed to the city of Merriam to begin real estate acquisition. And real estate shows here it's a 1.5-year process. I'm sorry, it's about a 2-year process, and that's typically what it takes. That's the city staff working with individual affected property owners and starting the discussion, holding negotiations, acquiring that real estate. There's two general buckets of real estate interests that are acquired. One is permanent easements, or actual property acquisition, and that's typically for where a project feature is going to be built. If we're building a flood wall or a levee on a piece of land, the city needs to obtain permanent real estate interest in that property. There's also a lot of places where there's temporary easements. Maybe it's access with a contractor during construction, maybe it's temporary staging, or just room for them to work. And so there are some properties that will be, temporary easements will be required, and typically after a set amount of time, 4 or 5 years, once construction's done, that easement goes away and the original property owner retains the original real estate interest that they had in that property. So that's what you see in that orangish bar is the time allowed for real estate. Now, the other big thing that happens after the notice to proceed is all of the utility work that's necessary. So any affected utility by this project, water, gas, sewer, in this case 2 bridges, will need to be relocated out of the way of the project so that when we start construction, we don't hit a utility that wasn't moved out of the way. So that starts before construction, and sometimes that goes all the way through construction. Sometimes there's some utilities that you just want to move it when you're actually building the levee and the flood wall. So that's that pink bar that spans many, many years. The 2 bridges, we would estimate about 1 year apiece to construct those. We do plan to not do them at the same time. They'll be sequential, so we won't have those 2 roads closed at the same time. So assume 1 year for each of them. And then you can see that, you know, finally, around 2034 is when we think we might be able to award a construction contract. Right now, we assume it would be a single construction contract, and that contractor would have 2 to 3 years to do all the work, build all the levees and flood walls, and ponding areas and everything else necessary. They will be the ones that determine the actual sequencing. Do they work from north to south, south to north, upstream to downstream? That's in their kind of means and methods that they'll figure out. But generally, there'll be a 2 or 3 year construction period that you can anticipate. And it all culminates in, right now, schedule 2037, 10, 11 years from now, completion of that project. And so when the project construction is completed, the closeout process involves transferring from construction to the operations and maintenance phase. So, you know, throughout this process, core staff, city staff, county staff are working and collaborating, but it's really key, especially at that end, to make sure that the sponsor is prepared to take on this project that they're anticipating, that they know what they need to do for the long term. And then the Corps of Engineers is always available to provide support, kind of reach back technical support after the fact. So issues come up during operations and maintenance, we're around to support. So I think that's kind of a general overview of what we had to present. That's kind of where we are now and the path ahead. I will, again, kind of put a plug in. We've got, and you can't see them now because they're all turned around backwards, but we've got a lot of posters with all these slides that you've seen more in detail. We've got, you know, computer models that we've got set up. If you want to ask a question about a specific property, we can answer that. We can zoom in right at the, you know, Google Street View map level if necessary to answer those questions. Again, we've got placemats and frequently asked questions available. So with that, I think we're ready to turn it over to the council, take any questions you may have. I may not answer them, but I'll ask my smart people to help me.
Just want to make feedback. We're good? Okay. Councilmember Aldrich, I represent Ward 2, which is the ward where this project takes place. On the very first slide, I think, or second slide, when we started getting into the meat of things, we talked about a 100-year flood at 85% assurance. Can you break that down in layman's terms so we understand exactly what that means and what it means for the people who work and live down there?
Sure. Connor, you want to answer that? H&H engineer, right there.
Okay. Yeah, so to break that down a little bit, you might hear us say 100-year flood a lot. Generally, that's kind of the easiest way to go about talking about it, but what we really mean is and it was already mentioned, but 1% annual exceedance probability. So just in any given year, based on the flooding history that we've seen in the watershed, we expect there to be a 1% chance for this magnitude of event to happen. And so when we talk about assurance as well, that's taking into account some uncertainty that we have just generally with the basin, with the hydrology. We don't have as good of gauged observed data or as long of a period of record of observed data as we might want to have, just based on the gauging that we have through the watershed. And so with that, what we try to target is a 85% level of assurance. And for us to make that recommendation to FEMA for accreditation, that's kind of the threshold to where we can confidently make that recommendation.
So as a follow-up then, does that mean the floodplain is gone, or does that mean it's 85% gone? Or can you answer like that in very plain terms for us?
Yeah, and so, with FEMA accreditation, we would make a recommendation to FEMA, and there would be some work then with the city and FEMA themselves. Some further requirements that they have in their regulations to then enter into the NFIP, which is the National Flood Insurance Program. And so that essentially, if you've ever looked at the FEMA floodplain maps, that would remove the levee area from the FEMA floodplain upon entrance of the NFIP.
Okay, so based on whatever maps you're gonna have up in here, you can tell us exactly where that area would be.
Yes, we can show you the flood area.
Jacob Leahy, council member in Ward 1. I just wanted to follow up to the question about the FEMA flood maps. If we anticipate the project completion done in 2037, how long does it take for FEMA to update those flood maps so that business owners can either stop paying flood insurance or can open up possibilities that's right now?
So at the end of our project, we will produce updated mapping information that we would provide to the city. And in this case, I think Johnson County is the floodplain management for Merriam is for this area. So Merriam would apply, I don't know if that's the official term, but apply to FEMA to update the flood maps. And they would be revised at that point. Brian, you can probably add what I didn't get.
Brian Derrick, Community Development Director. So if this project were to go forward, we'd work in conjunction with FEMA. We can start the process even when they get the plans done. It's called conditional letter of map revision, and we'll start that process. So the hope would be that when the project is done, it wouldn't take, it'd be fairly quick relatively to get it taken out of the floodplain. Because we already have all the information there. We just have to verify that it was built per plan and then get it certified.
I had another one on the 2025 flood. Do we have data on how severe a flood it was relative? I've heard tentatively it's a 125 or 25%, or would it be 125?
Yeah, 4% or a 1 in 25 year, but yes, that's kind of the correct number that we were estimating based on the rainfall amounts that we saw there.
Hi, I'm Jason Silvers, Ward 1 City Council member. I was just wondering if you could explain to us how the NOAA flood and rain maps have changed over the past 10 or so years, and then also explain how the duration and intensity of predicted storms has changed.
Yeah, so as far as the first part of your question with the NOAA frequency numbers, so during feasibility, 2013 to 2016 timeframe when that was going on, that was when NOAA actually released Atlas 14, which still to this day is the latest iteration of that, those rainfall amounts. And so during feasibility, we updated to those numbers, updated our hydrology to make sure we were looking at the most representative numbers for the area. But as I mentioned, that has persisted all the way through current day design. We still have Atlas 14, so we are still using those up-to-date numbers. No, I'm sorry, I forgot the second part of your question.
Yeah, the second part of the question, let me get to that in a second. So just to clarify, how did it change? Are they saying we'll have more frequent large storms? Can you explain how that works?
Yeah, so I suppose the easiest way to explain it is, I mean, when they did that update, that was 14, they had however many more years of rainfall data that they recorded and then kind of adjusted their frequency numbers based on that. But generally how that ended up was, I think the easiest way to think about it is for the 100-year storm, for example, we go from, and I don't remember the numbers quite off the top of my head, but we might have gone from 8 inches would be a 100-year storm and a 12-hour duration. But that now is bumped up in Atlas 14 to 8.8 inches. So generally it's kind of just an adjustment based on additional period of record data. And for some areas that goes down, or some areas it goes up. Just depends on kind of, like I said, the additional period of record data.
Thank you, and I think you answered my second question in that, which is the intensity of storms, the amount of rainfall that will happen in a period has increased based on that data in a shorter amount of time. Is that correct?
I would say it's increased for the rainfall amount has increased for those same frequencies. What those tables typically show on the website is, you know, if we had a 1-hour storm, if we had a 6-hour storm, if we had a 24-hour storm, so it brings those up by storm durations. So we can kind of look at those if we had whatever storm that we did have, kind of closely mapped to that. But generally it's just the frequency or the precipitation depth that is increased or just changed in general with a given frequency or duration.
All right, so before, A writer also for Ward 2, there was discussion previously in previous years about possibly having to move the Merriam Drive Bridge, realign it or something like that, but it didn't look like in the picture that it had moved a whole lot. So could anybody speak on that?
Courtney, you want to talk about that one? Realigning Merriam Drive Bridge.
So from above Merriam Drive, the road is not different. It is just raised straight, just vertically. But underneath, I think the piers are more aligned with the actual flow of the creek. Right now, they're not. And so with this new bridge, we can realign the piers underneath the bridge and increase that flow and increase that efficiency of that bridge without having to completely realign the bridge. So again, it's just a vertical raise, but with that new bridge, we can make it more efficient.
What does the bridge do?
That's like a common question. I will try. It's okay. So the bridge is going to be raised, but there will be flood wall on either side, and so it does slow down the water because the water will kind of come in contact with the bridge and then have to go underneath. So it does cause kind of a pinch point, and that's why, again, we need to raise that bridge. Because right now, with our current profile and elevation, the bridge would be over top, and we don't want that. We don't want the water coming over onto the road. So that's again why the bridges are being raised, is so that the water can go under the bridge and not over the bridge.
Ruby Kozmeyer, Ward 4. And so one of the big things I've heard from constituents is that flooding on Turkey Creek isn't a problem anymore, just because we haven't seen anything in 30 years. Can you want to explain why flood protection here is still important, still required, and why flooding is still a risk?
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, definitely I can talk to that a little bit. You know, we talked about in the flood history a little bit that 1998, that was kind of the big one of recent memory. And so that was almost 30 years ago now. There's a little uncertainty on the exact frequency of that event, but we think it's somewhere between a 50-year and a 100-year type event, or a 2%, 1% AEP. And so when we say 50-year or 100-year, I think it's mentioned already, but we're not saying it's going to happen every 50 years on the dot. When you think about flipping a coin, you might have a 50% chance to get heads, but just because you flip tails the first time doesn't mean heads come next. So a 1% event, while very infrequent in large magnitude, could potentially happen next year and then the year right after that. Or it could be 200 years before it happens. There's a little uncertainty in that, but just based on that historic data, it's less of a question of if there's going to be a big flood and more of when there will be a big flood. And so that's something that we just try to account for. And just in addition, as we talked about with the FEMA accreditation, designing to that threshold that we can make that recommendation to.
Lee Brown, Chief of the Geotechnical Branch. One of the things that falls under my purview is our levee safety program. And so I think another part, in addition to the frequency, is the flashy nature of Turkey Creek. And so we have several levees, hundreds of miles along the main stem Missouri, where we have weeks knowing that a flood is coming. City, get ready, make sure that you're ready to fight it. You all in the room know better than I do, we don't have that luxury on Turkey Creek. That when we have the 100-year event, or even the 25-year event, it comes up in a matter of minutes, and you don't have the ability to prepare and get people out of the water's way. And so having these passive flood control or flood risk reduction measures has a significant impact on life safety.
Yeah, I would also, to Reed's point, the flood that we had last year in 2025, while it wasn't as severe as some of the ones that we have had in the past, it did get out of banks. We saw that high water mark there on Waterfall Park. So it did find its way into some low-lying floodplain areas, and this all happened overnight in a matter of 2 hours, to where, if it wasn't for some of the photos that came out and some of the damage that was evident, people might not even know that it happened. So again, just to Reed's point, this is a very, very flashy system that can be up and down in a matter of 6 to 12 hours. So there's little time to flood through it.
Thanks. And then one other question. So when you compared the existing inundation for the 1% with the post-project, is that the current effective SFHA, or is that the draft boundaries from the Johnson County model that hasn't the 2D one?
So the red that we see there, the existing conditions, that's from our modeling in-house utilizing the FEMA flood map. What we do have, and I can show it in the breakout session, is the current SFHA. So not the draft one that has not been published yet, but we do have the current one. We can also compare that too.
I think, Connor, one thing to add on this slide, just to make it crystal clear, so areas that are in that kind of reddish pink, those are the areas that see the flood reduction benefits from this project. So areas in purple, that's where the flooding is after the project, but if it's in pink, that's an area that without levee and flood wall would be inundated, would be flooded, and with the project, it's not.
Yeah, this is Chris Caldwell, I represent Ward 3 in the City Council. And can you speak to the downstream impacts of this project? Specifically the railroad bridge, and I-35, and then on into the rest of the road.
Connor again.
Yeah, so that's something that we have been evaluating as we go through design, as far as downstream impacts, because and I think Jeff mentioned earlier, that water's gotta go somewhere, so if we're stopping it from flooding out in the floodplain, we expect more of it to go downstream. And so it's something as part of the design that we've been attempting to mitigate those downstream impacts. And that's certainly something we can show in the breakout session on the model. But yes, I mean, you're right, that railroad bridge down there by Waterfall Park is certainly kind of a low-lying area, I mean, especially relative to everything else. And it's a little bit of a issue in conjunction, not only from Turkey Creek flooding, but I believe it's called Brown Creek that runs through there as well. That's a fairly large drainage area that comes in along there too, so it's kind of a double whammy through there. And so that's something that we can look at the breakout session and show that for those that are interested.
This map here, you can just barely see in the top right corner of that pink or that purple that shows where some of that flooding is on the other side of the interstate. The actual, I think we have one of the posters has the full extent of the model, which goes clear into Wyandotte County, right? So you've looked at the project, miles downstream and upstream to understand really where the pinch points are, because they may not be just within the downtown or the city limits of Merriam.
Chris Owens, hands, Ward 3. I have just a question. If FEMA doesn't update their atlas maps frequently, what's the likelihood we're gonna do all this work and then boom, they're gonna update it and we're out of sync with them?
Yeah, Brian, you want to handle that? I can tell you that the atlas maps the atlas information is updated by NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. FEMA does the flood maps, but I think Brian can still answer the general question.
That's always going to be, so the current maps we have now are 2009. The question about updating maps is always, it's always going to happen. We have, or when I say we, it's core, the city, as well as Johnson County, have been all working very closely together. As mentioned, Johnson County's undertaken starting doing some remapping of all the watersheds. So we've all done an excellent job. Core and county done an excellent job working together to try to reduce the chance of that happening. So as earlier mentioned, all these models align very well. We, I don't speak for the Corps, but from the city's perspective, we think that we've done everything we can to make sure that if this project is done, it will fit right in with FEMA's modeling and be taken out fully. That's why the county is up. That's why I mentioned earlier. The county is working on updating maps. So yeah, all the information we have that we have available has been utilized to the utmost. So we can all tell the future. All we could in Vegas, playing games of chance, but we don't. So we've used the best information we have available today to come up with a best plan that will fit within the FEMA model.
I have two quick ones. The first one, replacing the Johnson Drive Bridge, said it needs to go up. Does that involve us having to move, replace, relocate any railroad track that's near that area?
Number one goal for this project at the beginning was to not have to work with the railroad.
So that's
ridiculous.
I'm having that personal experience with other railroad projects. We do our best to work well with them, but we try to avoid impacting them as much as possible. And we've been successful. So I think, Courtney, correct me if I'm wrong, I'll try to get to that interchange while you can talk about it. You're talking about Johnson Drive, right?
Showing, yeah.
Yeah, and the railroad bridge crosses right here.
Yeah, it's hard to see, but there is some, so with Johnson Drive, since we're raising the bridge, there is some road work on that east side, that intersection, and then, some of the road impacts, but we do tie in before the railroad.
Okay, all right, to know. And second question, this is a little bit more on the aesthetic side. I saw some pictures of trail going next to giant concrete flood walls. And right now, I know public safety is top of mind with this project, but the trail and the creek next to it is an amenity in the city, and it's something that people love. Does the design, I can see these lines here, right? But how much of the trail as it exists now would be next to a bunch of concrete walls, as we saw?
Can you answer that?
Yeah, can you go back one slide? So the existing trails on the west side, so on the top kind of part of this map, and we actually do not have very many features on that west side. So there is a small portion where we need a little bit of flood wall, but otherwise the trails are existing mostly as they are on that west side. And again, like some minor changes where we're at Johnson Drive, since we're putting a new bridge, we wanna make sure that the trail still goes under. So there might be, when we say realignment, it's really just to make sure it still goes under Johnson Drive. But yeah, there's very little impacts to the existing trails with this current design. When I said new trails, those are mainly on top of the levee. That picture did show a flood wall, because there is a little bit of flood wall, but it's new. So it's addition, what we would consider additional trails, not the existing trails.
Hey, Stacy Shibata, City Council Ward 4. I have more of a logistics question. So with the timeline, so after final design, then this would be put to bid to contractors, right? And that's when we would really start working as a city and community in terms of how the contractor would want to build this, what easements we would need, and all of that stuff. So this would be falling closer to 2031, 2032 in terms of some of those logistics conversations and like what we would need, I mean, based on, you know, this kind of timeline right now. Is that correct?
So the contract for the levee and flood wall construction would be advertised and awarded by the Corps of Engineers. It'd be a federal contract. So there'd be input from the city in terms of a lot of the logistics for that. That would be occurring really in this time frame, you know, by the year or two before awarding that. With all of the utility relocation work and potentially the bridge replacement, whoever owns that utility or bridge is likely going to be the one that's initiating and executing that contract. And so I would imagine Merriam will have some utilities, Evergy and the gas utility, Stormwater will have their own effort to relocate that. There'll be a lot of coordination that city staff will be heavily involved with, yeah.
To follow up on that real quick, are you anticipating these being as 3 separate bid projects so that each bridge would go to a different contractor? Or is there a way to condense them, run them all concurrently, and rather than deal with a little bit of disturbance for 5 years, deal with a lot of disturbance for a few years? Is that like a decision that we could weigh later on?
Yeah, that decision hasn't officially been made right now. This is the best estimate over, you know, a reasonable approach. And as we move forward and into implementation, we'll consider, you know, the circumstances at the time and see what.
I think we see everybody bidding against each other and paying a premium.
Right, exactly.
I've got another flood wall question actually. So you had that great rendering of the flood wall from the stream side. Do you have one from the protected side, what that would look like?
I don't believe we have one currently now.
I just want to give you guys a thank you, not to wrap it up, I think Jason's got one more, but thank you guys for all your hard work. I know that we would be hard pressed to come up with a question that was, have you considered something? Because I know you guys are all great professionals in your different fields, and I just want to thank you for all the time and effort and dedication that you put into this project. And you know, this is one of probably many core projects that you guys are doing, and you've experienced a lot of these questions and have thought of anything that you can probably answer or ask.
Jake was kidding. I have one more question as well. I know, Jason's gonna wrap it up. So after project completion, you mentioned asset handoff. We have partner in some ways with the Merriam Drainage District, who manages the creek itself. Who did these assets go to? Do they go to the city? Do they go to the drainage district? Do you guys handle them? What does maintenance look like?
The levee and flood wall features, right now, the agreement that, the contract that's in place between the federal government is with the city of Merriam. So anything constructed as part of the project, levee, flood wall, some of the gates, will go to the city of Merriam. Now, Merriam, you may have your own plans, how you intend to manage those going forward.
Please can depend on what assets there are.
Yep.
last question. So far we've really focused on levees and retention walls and property. But I know the Corps of Engineers loves data. Do you have any data? Do you ever focus on how this could alleviate loss of life?
Reed, do you want to answer that question?
So, yes, we do risk assessments during our design, and a few things that we look at is, one, the risk for an existing feature, the risk of overtopping, and then we want to make sure the things that we do don't increase life safety risk. In addition to that, there's not a significant level of protection here. So when you talk about life safety risk, the life safety risk is lowered by building the features that we're recommending. And that's, again, it gets to the depth of the inundation, the velocities that come through here, because Turkey Creek does flow pretty quickly, and then also that really short timeline that the population just does not have time to respond and evacuate and get out of those life-threatening inundations. So yes, we look at that and we make sure that our project is justifiable, not just on the economic side, but that we're choosing the optimum arrangement of features from a life safety perspective as well.
Thank you.
We're good. Okay, well, very good question for all the council. The one thing that I don't think was really, and I don't expect an answer, and obviously, some of the businesses in downtown will be adversely impacted in the sense of a couple ways. One being that the building may have to be acquired, and then the second thing being that a lot of the businesses that are currently operational will be adversely impacted while the building of the levees and the walls are going on. Do you address any of that? Will businesses have to shut down or during any of that process? I know when bridges be shut down, it'll be more difficult for people to get to the business, but how might that adversely impact some of our current downtown businesses? And not specifically, I don't want you to answer what buildings will be gone. I think as the businesses that are here represented this evening in the audience, we have an opportunity to see how they're adversely impacted one-on-one with you at the open house.
I think Courtney, and I'm going to set you up to answer the question. I think you'd mentioned that there's been a lot of coordination, at least to this point, as the designers were deciding, where do we need to put levee and flood wall, and what do those features look like, and getting input from city staff to try to minimize that impact to the maximum extent possible. And I know you can't eliminate it, and 5 years of construction or 3 years of construction is going to be an impact. But Courtney, do you have anything else that you can add to that?
No, I think that again, what Jeff said, I mean, we took a lot of care to try and reduce those impacts as much as possible, but we know that they're not zero. And so I think on those real estate maps, they're easier to see kind of the specifics of the properties. Yeah, that is why we chose to put flood walls where we chose to put them, is to try to minimize those impacts as much as possible. Permanently, and then temporarily, that's something that again, we'll have to work out during construction. How long that might be and how long that impact might be, just depends on what's being constructed nearby.
And that gets to your question, sir, about the combination factors to consider about splitting out contracts or combining them. Maybe more impact for a shorter duration seems to be preferable to spreading it out longer. So something to consider in the final design phase. That's really when we kind of run through the analysis and consideration of those factors.
Well, Councilman Lahey kind of already expressed what I was going to wrap up with reference to. Thank you for all the hard work you guys have done. I mean, obviously you're all experts in your fields, and sharing that this evening to bring us up a little bit more up to speed as to what we can anticipate and going forward. We appreciate that. I encourage all the business owners and any of the residents in the audience to stay for the open house after this meeting is concluded in order to speak with you guys individually and find out how that might impact each person individually. Do you have anything else for us before we move on with the rest of our meeting?
I would just like to say, Chris and Ryan and the other staff. It's been great working with a lot of the city staff. We worked with staff from Johnson County and Merriam Drainage District. And, this really has been a team effort to put together these plans. So kudos to you and all your staff for supporting that effort as well. With that, I'll turn it over.
Okay, thanks, sir. One thing, I'll turn over to Mr. Engel as far as, do we have anything from staff itself that you need to cover the city?
No, sir.
Okay, we have nothing from staff. I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adjourn.
We have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, second.
Madam Clerk, we have a motion and a second.
All in favor? Meeting's adjourned.
Absolutely sticking around. They got some questions based on the stuff that they told us.
Listen, it was nice meeting you, and I will have my son contact with you. Okay. If that's okay.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, they created a quagmire looming over our downtown. And it kind of stinks, and it doesn't even address the root causes. It doesn't address where it comes from and where about it. The guy up there, it said it's flooding at waterfall, right? Yeah, and yet that area is not even in the plan. So, yeah, all these little tripod dealies. Have fun. Howdy.
Yeah, I know.
Excuse me, I just can't get in. You want the story, Jerry?
I was taking some notes, writing down some questions for them.
So what we think so far is that we can do something temporary. So instead of the 3 steps that you have, because the road's a little higher, they go 2 steps.
Trucks
So
work
that's
here all the
actually placed in our
time.
favor that the businesses are higher, because then we can raise the road,
Taking
raise
part
the
of my
sidewalk
property
out.
for that temporary construction. That would happen.
We were
Effectively shut the elevation. So I think it depends on what you have an elevation. I mean, thinking about just construction in general, you've got to have a way to get to the site, and you've got to have a way to move the wheel on and off. Working from the channel, given the dynamics of it, can't really do that. So I would imagine that probably some amount of access.
You guys do great work on this. Where can I get back to normal hiring?
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Absolutely. Yeah. Did you get all your questions answered?
I actually wrote some down for you.
Okay.
You mentioned that one of the original goals was not to disturb the railroad, right?
Yeah, that's kind of it.
Or one of the strong points, I guess.
Yeah, it's just they have a lot of rigid requirements, and it's really expensive to anytime you touch a little bit of their right of way or whatnot. So we try to avoid them if at all possible. And I mean, in this case, we weren't anywhere close to touching them, so it's like a sigh of relief.
Yeah, not so much for me because the water bottlenecks at that railroad bridge. Okay, I mean you knew that from 2025, right? Saw the photos.
You should probably talk to I'm not an engineer. I'm not working on the hydraulic
The hydrologist guy is over there.
Connor can probably answer all the questions that you might have about the
hydrology part.
Hydrology,
Okay.
and I know that they have looked at that bridge specifically. It's in our hydraulic model to account for that. So he can talk specifics about that.
Okay. So any non-hydrologic questions I could ask you then, I guess. Do you know much about the city's property acquisition? Because it was on the map for 2030, right? The acquisition phase.
Yeah.
But the city's been acquiring lots of property. Why are they acquiring it so much earlier?
So You have to ask Merriam about that. So
Yeah.
we don't officially issue our notice to proceed to acquire the property, and when they do obtain property, there is some federal regulations about real estate acquisition that they have to follow. So some of what they've been doing, they're kind of acquiring at their own risk. That maybe we need it for this project, maybe we don't.
Yeah, and I've seen many parcels that weren't even on the map and flood zone or anything like that. So.
And so those won't be for the project.
Yeah.
And part of the real estate cost is part of the project. But if we, let's say the project is here and they acquire real estate there, we won't allow that to be included as part of the project because it's not related. So when our engineers say, we try to figure out really, how much, do we need 5 feet or 10 feet here? Yeah, we draw the line, and any real estate they acquire outside of that is on the city government. Yeah, it's not part of it's not paid for as part of this project, and they're doing some of that at their own risk.
Okay. Nice to see you, Bill.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. He's taking all the tough questions. That's a fancy map, huh?
But they're out of the rooms, they're still able to get to a barber shop and business.
Yeah, we're not cutting off any access to the entrances to the building.
Is this the wall?
Yeah, and I wish I had the layer in here. I think I forgot it, but yes, generally we see this line here is
Was there a map showing the trail would now be on the east side of the creek in this view after the construction? Would it still be on the west?
It'll still be on the west. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So
I couldn't read the map key from the back of the room.
It's hard to. From the back of the room, it's definitely hard to see.
The screens were kind of washed out with the overhead lights.
Yeah. Let me turn on. I'm gonna turn on a whole bunch of stuff here and then turn it off.
Have you guys studied like all the water coming in and out of the creek, like the entries and exits to it?
Yeah, so generally we try and take into account wherever we expect to have inflows.
Yeah.
So that would be kind of a local drainage area or a smaller creek that would flow in. And so we definitely try to account for that. For example, Werner Park has kind of that runoff creek that drains into the channel.
Yes, it does. It's a gusher during storms.
Oh, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, everywhere is a gusher, but
there's a lot of water that comes through here. A whole lot.
Yes.
And it goes sort of under the parking lot. That's called Quaker Creek?
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. I hadn't seen that. I don't remember that name on the Merriam maps, but
right here I think is where it dumps into the channel upstream of Johnson Drive.
So what percentage of the water that ends up having to pass under the railroad bridge would you guess is first coming west under the railroad tracks with tunnels like this? You think it's 50%?
As far as contributing to
the flood potential of that area?
I'm trying to think back to the numbers. I would say
there's at least 10 or so of these type of things that go under.
I would say from Quaker Creek itself, maybe 5-10% of the flow at that point. Generally, the majority of the flow has already entered the channel by the time we get to Shawnee Mission Parkway.
Assuming it's even, the clouds are even and all that stuff.
It's highly dependent on that, yeah.
Okay, and in a perfect vacuum with spherical cows, as they say. All right.
And there's obviously
so
other,
probably I think like maybe 5-ish for each of these crossings where the water comes under, 5-ish%.
Quaker Creek is our major one, actual project area. The rest of those are fairly small, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
And that's generally collecting stormwater runoff through the street inlets and then draining out to the creek. But
there's a lot of those.
This is definitely the big one that comes in through Quaker Creek. And, way back in the day, this was an actual natural creek that drained in from these bluffs off the top.
Yeah.
And just over time, with the urbanization.
And then they built
over
the Merriam Town Center right here. And all this water, I think some of it goes this way and some of it goes that way. Is that right?
Yeah, some of it drains up towards Highway 35 around the bend there. 69, I think.
Is there a reason why they wouldn't have directed that north to be downstream of the railroad bridge? When they first constructed these underpasses for water,
I don't know if I have a great answer to that, but I mean, I would expect us to follow what the natural topography was.
Yeah.
If we try to bury or reroute drainage up north, you're cutting through a lot of higher bluffs where you'd have to dig down pretty significantly.
There'd be some digging, or a tunneling machine. I don't know how they do.
Yeah,
like digging under large highways.
I'd definitely have to look at some of the topography here, but
in this case, it would have to go under Johnson right there to carry it north, like along the east side of the highway, and then it could dump into the creek downstream of the obstruction and reduce at least 20% of the flow, because there's at least 4 of those undercuts between IKEA and the actual railroad crossing. The railroad crossing is even further north.
Yeah, that's
it's all the way up there. Yeah. Yep. So, like, if there was drainage, I know there's like a side drainage for the highway that runs up through here. If that could be widened just a little bit or deepened or whatever to carry water, I guess you'd need to tunnel under the on-ramp, right, to get to the creek under there. But Antioch is a bridge right there too, so it could go between those 2 bridges and dump in, and that would reduce like 20% of the volume. Yeah, maybe 15, maybe 25, without changing anything in the downtown area.
Yeah. I think it would.
It's too bad that
it would reduce some of the
flow
contributions into Turkey Creek. But as far as
why was that not considered in the plan? All the plan area ends at this point. All the maps that I've seen. Why do all the maps end here and they don't go up? Like the work area.
As far as the project extent, we do end it right there, and that's what the original authorization was from the feasibility study in 2016. That's what we're authorized for. If we were to explore moving further downstream, we'd have to essentially kind of reauthorize the project, which would almost be starting from scratch.
That would be a lot of delay.
It'd be a lot of delay.
How did Congress pick that point? Was that what was suggested to them by staff or something, or?
This
stopping
was,
at that polygon that ends at that point.
So this was, I guess, a combination of things. It was what came out of the feasibility study, what we thought was the most appropriate plan or the most optimal plan from a life safety and a benefits standpoint.
Yeah.
But then in combination with what the city at the time in 2016,
the city government. You mean the city government?
Yes. Merriam, Johnson County. Kind of what their picture was, because it is a partnership where we're designing what they're envisioning, I suppose.
A lot of the land in and around the creek is owned not by Merriam, but by the Merriam Drainage District. You know that, right?
In the creek?
Yeah. The creek entirely is MDD, and most of the banks around it are MDD.
Yeah, I think we do show that on the real estate maps over there.
So I'm curious why MDD was not like the lead organization for this project, or at least involved more, because I go to their meetings and it always feel like they were like a fifth wheel. You know?
I mean, I wouldn't say that. We have our
You have an
either
engineering
bi-monthly or monthly meetings, and typically we've had Steve Roth, I think.
Steve Roth is their engineer. Yeah.
So we've had him on a lot of those calls to kind of talk about, and he's provided a lot of insight on to the channel and just some of the flood history that we've had.
All right. Well, I had some more questions for you. They're waiting on you too, so I will circle the room and I'll swing back. Sound good? Thank you for your service, Connor.
Yeah. Thank you.
A lot of work went into that. I appreciate that.
4 or 5 years ago, I had somebody from the
Howdy, Jared.